All right. So, we are going to get started and just see if other people join. But we'll just kind of introduce ourselves and we'll introduce the event and we will talk a little bit, give a kind of overview of the community projects, and we can answer questions along the way. So if you've got questions, feel free to pop them into the chat or unmute your microphone and we'll be happy to answer them. And we have a few questions that we've sort of highlighted just from other community members that were submitted before this info session. So welcome to our Solstice Walk Community Projects Zoom session. My name is Megan Stewart. I'm the artistic director of the River Clyde Pageant.
And I'm Evan Furness, season producer.
Yes, and together with a couple other folks on the team, we produced the Solstice Walk, the River Clyde Solstice Walk. This is the 4th edition of the event. It began in 2020 in the midst of a lockdown, and the first 2 years were very much kind of scaled down versions of the event. And last year, we were kind of finally able to realize the fullest iteration of this festival, kind of post COVID, and we're really kind of excited to kind of reach that threshold because the sort of iteration in 2022 featured a whole bunch of artists involved, community members involved. There was a full program of workshops involved, and just it was a real kind of activation of New Glasgow on the darkest day of the year. So it began in 2020. Some of the kind of themes behind the solstice walk, obviously it's taking place on the winter solstice, which is the longest night or the darkest day of the year. And the kind of mission behind it is to kind of bring light into the darkness, to sort of center that sort of breath of light and hope and optimism into dark times, to kind of encourage community togetherness, and also to encourage individual and community well-being. It's a very tough time of year for a lot of people. The holidays are often kind of joyous and family centered, but they are also fraught, and they are not easy for everybody, and also not everybody celebrates in the same way. And so we're really, with the solstice walk, trying to create an event that is very family friendly, that is not directly tied to Christmas, but is sort of about observing the changes in nature and in ourselves sort of that happen around this time of year, and promoting hope and light and community togetherness. And so we're really excited to build on last year's Solstice Walk event. Last year was the first time that we issued this call for community projects. We were really excited because we were able to fund 9 distinct projects through this call, and give these different project contributors sort of mentorship and funds and support to kind of help them realize these projects and integrate it into the walk. Evan was actually one of those community project artists last year. So to tell you a little bit about the structure of the Solstice Walk event, everybody gathers in New Glasgow outside the PEI Preserve Company at 6 p.m. We have several different parking areas. We use the PEI Preserve Company parking lot. We use the PEI Lobster Suppers and the New Glasgow Christian Church parking lots. And there's sort of a large gathering of people in front of the Preserve Co. at 6 p.m. There's sort of a welcoming speech and a welcoming song. And then the attendees all sort of travel together along a route that goes through the Gardens of Hope, just kind of behind the Preserve Company, sort of passing through a forested area and along these pathways. And then it moves across the New Glasgow Bridge, goes sort of past the Wishing Well, which is across from the toy factory, and culminates in the parking lot of the mill in New Glasgow. And at the mill, there are bonfires, there's fire dancing. We have more sort of music and performances on the veranda and in the parking lot of the mill. And we also offer hot soup and hot chocolate and cider. Yeah, and the event sort of wraps up by around 8 p.m. The route itself is 1 kilometer. It takes about 20 to 25 minutes to sort of travel it. Last year we had about 400 people traveling through the whole walk, and we expect to have about 500 people this year at the event. I will actually take a minute now and just like I'll share my screen and show the route where we travel. 1 second. So if you can see my screen here, it shows, yeah, so we're gathering just in front of the Preserve Company here, and then traveling behind the building for the start of the walk, sort of up this pathway. This is a bit of a forested area right over here, and this too, and then we sort of like come back out in front of a field and the herb garden. We retrace our steps, and then you'll see here we travel across the bridge. The Wishing Well is sort of right around here, and then everything kind of culminates at the mill. And the event wraps up by around 8 o'clock. So that is just a bit of a overview of the route itself. I'll move into talking a little bit about the community projects. So with this call, we are really excited to kind of mobilize and welcome community artists of all kinds. So we would love to receive submissions from families. We would love to receive submissions from students, from groups of friends, from any sort of like community group. Emerging artists, absolutely. We really want to emphasize that you do not need to be a professional artist to submit a project idea. We're interested in supporting projects that are either static, which means they would be happening in one location along the route, or they are roving and traveling kind of with the procession. Sort of based on some submissions that we got last year, some really ideal, impactful projects could be things like a large scale lantern. So if you have an idea for a particular kind of lantern that you'd like to make, that can be super impactful. A puppet of some kind that travels along the route. Maybe there's like a costumed character that you would like to be, or maybe you have an idea for a performance, which could be a song or a dance, or some sort of performance that you could repeat as many people travel along the route and experience the walk. We're also open to installation-based projects, but they really should take into consideration the format of the walk, which is that people are kind of traveling the route surprisingly quickly.
Yeah.
And they're not necessarily going to be stopping for really long periods of time to interact with a piece. So, if it is an installation, something that they can kind of like move through and sort of like take in as they're walking through a space could work well. Yeah, and I'll let Evan kind of talk a little bit about some of the details of the call. And I'll also just say, if you have questions at any time, feel free to pop them in the chat.
Yeah. Thanks, Megan.
Yeah.
For all that info. Yeah, the details of the community call. Megan kind of described all of the different types of projects that we're looking for. But what we will actually provide to people who participate in the community projects are an honoraria to cover the materials and artist fee of up to $400 per project. So that could help cover like the build, as well as, just a little fee to, pay yourself for all the work that you've done.
Anything you need to buy.
Anything you need to buy related to the project. In addition to that, we're also offering mentorship to these community projects. I will be one of the mentors, as well as Megan, and we have a few other great artists who have familiarity with the Solstice Walk, and doing community projects as well. So they'll be a great asset in helping you kind of realize your project, and considering the specific format that the Solstice Walk offers. We'll also be offering 3 different open studio sessions, some in New Glasgow, but also some in Charlottetown. So I'll just list the dates here for you, just so you have them in your head. December 9th at the Mill from 1 to 4 p.m. December 16th, this will be in in Charlottetown. Locations still do be determined, but 1 to 4 as well. And then December 17th will also be at the Mill from 1 to 4 p.m. So there's 2 in New Glasgow, 1 in Charlottetown. Hopefully, amongst those, you will have time to actually meet in person with your mentor. And I took great advantage of the mentorship and the open studio when I did the community project, and I found it really helped me better conceptualize what I was working on, and also like how I could integrate it better into the event. And it's also just like good to have the reassurance of, the people actually putting on the thing that you're in the right direction. So I really recommend you use them.
Yeah.
And that's what we're there for. We're there to help.
Yeah. And they're not required.
Yeah.
It's not required that you attend them, but it is sort of like built-in time when that like folks from the pageant team will be there to support you and can help with like troubleshooting or, assisting with, giving you advice.
Yeah. And that could even be something as simple as like, I don't know how this is going to like work in the format of a walk. Like we can workshop that with you.
Yeah.
Another thing about this call is we really want you to consider your capacity in terms of what you can do on your own. Like we will be around to help with the creation and like the installation, but really it should be something that you would feel comfortable doing on your own. Like something within the scope that you feel like you could put on yourself, because, we do have a lot of other things going on and we do want to support you, but it is something that ultimately like you will have to install with our support. So just keep that in mind when you're pitching projects. And of course, we're here to help as much as we can, for sure. So just think within your skill set and, push yourself, but don't go too far out of your bounds.
Make sure you have the sort of like human resources support to realize your idea, and that if you don't immediately have the skill set, that you feel like you could kind of like learn or acquire those skills somewhat easily to make your project happen. Yeah,
exactly. So I guess the next piece of this is like how we actually select these projects, because we get quite a number of submissions. So the deadline is Sunday, November 19th at midnight, through the Google form, which I will link in the chat shortly here. And the selection process is done through the River Clyde Arts team. We have 4 staff members with a very broad range of experience. And so I'll be looking at the proposals individually and kind of choosing ones that both fit the themes of the project, but also are viable for us to put on and help support. So that process will kind of be like a negotiation between all of us of like what we think will fit best and be beneficial to everybody involved.
And we will support as many projects as we can.
That is our goal. And we hope to notify everybody whether you've been accepted or not by November 24th at the latest. So that gives you a bit of a timeline of what to expect. And then selected projects will be paired with a mentor that we think best fits the project. So, if you're doing a sound piece, maybe you get put with me because I work with sound, or like if you're building a lantern, maybe you get put with someone who's more familiar with that. So we do try and match them. with specific skill sets. And then maybe to close out this section, I'll just talk about my experience doing the community projects last year, which I had a great time, hence why I'm working now. But yeah, my experience was basically like, I submitted my proposal and then they came back and, they were like, you've been accepted. So I got to work. And it was a fairly independent process, but there were moments where the pageant made a point to check in. So like there were a couple like progress reports that I just had to like fill out and be like, this is where I'm at. This is what I still need to do. And so I'd send that to them and they'd be like, cool. I used the open studios as a point to be like, am I on the right track of like the tone that I'm looking for in my sound piece? And like, are there things that I could be improving on, that sort of thing. And so I found those really helpful in just like solidifying my vision of what my project was going to be in the end.
And can you talk about what your project
Yeah,
was?
that would be helpful.
Yeah.
So my project was, it ended up being a video and sound installation that I recorded at the Gardens of Hope where the walk takes place. And so I went in with some like recording devices and I just recorded like every sound that I could in the garden. So that it's a lot of geese around at the time, a lot of geese, some crows. I like played with like the pine needles on the trees to make some funny sounds, like the fence that was there, and like all the like the snow crunching under my boots because there had been like a good snowstorm right before I went, which was great. And so like I kind of compiled all these sounds and like basically composed this like this audio piece that was like very atmospheric and kind of just built on trying to create like a wintry kind of like magical but like mysterious soundscape. And my goal initially was to kind of just like plant some speakers along the path and like kind of guide people through the walk with that sound. And all of the sounds that I used in the end were like generated from that location. So that was kind of my conceptual like point of the project. But then when I got to like the install phase, it was kind of interesting because I was in the space, with my speakers, kind of testing things out. And I was like, feel like this needs a little bit more to like, make a bigger impact just in the format of a walk. And so I added like a projection element that it was a video of like pine needles layered over each other, just projected onto the trees, just as kind of like a visual cue that you were like exiting the piece. And so all of that kind of stuff was developed on my own, but also in consultation with my mentor, who was Ian McFarland, who's like a regular pageant person. But kind of the main thing that I took away from it and like what I want to impart to all of you who might be listening to this is that like my piece was a static piece. People walked by it. And I tried to take that into consideration when I was making it. Like I had them quite well spaced out. I don't know the exact distance, but it was like
your speakers.
My speakers, yeah.
Right.
So there was like kind of a slope up onto like this other part of the path. And I like placed the speaker so that as you walked up, you would hear the sound no matter where you were along the path. And I think it worked in that way. But I do remember noticing like as the crowd went by, like someone came up to me and was like, okay, the crowd's passed, like you're done. And me being like, whoa, that was really fast.
Right.
Like I think my audio piece was like 20 minutes.
Right.
And I don't know if I made it all the way to the end, but it was just to say like, really think about how the audience moves past your piece, because I think I tried to consider it, but I didn't quite anticipate how quickly they would move.
Yeah.
And so if you are making a static piece, from my experience, I guess that's just what I want to impart to you is like, think about the movement of the audience, think about like how long this will stay with them. Are they just going to walk past it and, it just be a blip in their mind?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll share a few photos, just and maybe talk a little bit about some of the projects that we did, that, I felt were really successful last year. I mean, they were all very successful. But just here's a few, just to kind of like give you a taste. So this project right here, this is a piece called The Birth of the Sun, which Jenna White created with her daughter Paige, who is pictured in the image. Jenna sort of created the costume and kind of designed the concept for this sort of performance. And Paige basically was placed in a particular spot in the Gardens of Hope and kind of moved around that spot. And as the audience sort of walked by, they could kind of see her and like take photos. And it really kind of like it enhanced a particularly kind of like dark space within the walk, which I thought was really cool. And it was just like great to sort of see this kind of like character costume driven performance that ultimately was quite simple, but I think very impactful. um let's see if I can switch into another photo here. So this piece that you'll see here, this is called Memorial Tree. It was created by the artist Lake Ma, and she did this beautiful piece where she passed out, she made all of these paper origami butterflies, which she passed out to attendees of the walk at the very beginning. And all of them were illuminated, they all lit up. And attendees were sort of invited to kind of like hold the butterfly, take it with them along the walk, and think about somebody who wasn't with them for whatever reason. It could be because they had passed away or they were living somewhere else, or whatever reason. And to sort of like hold this person in their thoughts as they walked. And then when they arrived at this particular tree, which was near the end of the route, they placed the butterfly onto the tree, and then we're actually able to take another gold butterfly off of the tree as a little memento. And I thought that project was really beautiful. It really kind of connected with the sort of themes of light and hope, and sort of like change, in a really beautiful way. This is a lantern, which Becca Griffin and Andrew McGinnis created. And again, this is like a really great use of sort of some of the lantern building techniques that we teach in the solstice workshops, but kind of taken to the next level. So they had attended lantern workshops the previous year and really learned these techniques, and then we're sort of able to be like, you know what, we want to sort of make this large scale crescent moon lantern, which they did. And it was a really wonderful piece. It traveled with the procession, and then was kind of hanging around the parking lot of the mill at the end of the performance. This is a photograph of Tunes and Tales, who are a musical group for children, and they created an illuminated cranky, which you'll see here. And they performed a song kind of along with this cranky at the mill parking lot, and we kind of gathered a group of people around a bonfire with chairs, and they performed this song a couple times. And I think it too was a very successful project. It was like really specifically aimed at kids and families, and we thought that was like a really nice aspect, just to sort of like have something that is really created kind of specifically for this age group, which was cool. This is a detail of a puppet, sort of illuminated puppet that Kelly Casely made with her family. So she and her kids and a couple of their friends all worked together to create this long multi-person puppet that was a school of illuminated fish. Fairly simple design, but very impactful in terms of its execution. This traveled with the procession, and was just, it was like really fun. And I think it was a very positive experience for Kelly and her family to work on this. This was a more ambitious project by Sonia Lucent, who designed a very cool installation and sound piece that's sort of inspired by black holes and inspired by some of the like sonic landscapes of black holes. And so this was a piece that audiences passed through near the end of the walk, which was really cool. And there was sort of like, as they moved through, they experienced this kind of particular soundscape, and Somnia was sort of there as they emerged from this tunnel, just to kind of like welcome people and congratulate them for having come through it. So it was pretty cool. So yeah, those are just a few examples of some, but not all of the projects last year to give you a little bit of a taste of some of the submissions we got. We'll answer a couple questions that we received before the info session. Again, if you've got questions, just drop them in the chat or feel free to unmute your microphone. But a question we received was sort of like, should the community projects respond to the specific themes of the Solstice Walk? And our answer is yes, absolutely. The more sort of like aligned with these themes of light and darkness, change, transformation, hope, togetherness, the more aligned I think you can kind of like, the more alignment you can draw between your project and these themes, the better. We really want to encourage that as a jumping off point. Again, like you can be very loose with it, of course. But I think that's really a great way to like think about your project, and if you're sort of like trying to gain inspiration, I would say to start there. The other thing that I want to mention too is at the River Clyde Pageant, and sort of like across all of the events we do throughout our season, we really try and emphasize sustainability and being kind of resourceful when it comes to the materials we use. So we really try to avoid, like working with materials that are like single use, that, don't necessarily have a life beyond the scope of your project. So we really invite participants to kind of like think about all of the materials that they're using, where those materials are coming from, what's going to happen with them afterwards, and to just like consider the kind of like full life of everything that you're using in your piece, and where it goes after the event is done.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Another thing that we would love or like to put in your heads is that if your piece doesn't get selected, can you still bring the project to the walk? The answer is yes, to an extent. So if your piece is like a puppet or a costume or like something that moves with the walk that doesn't get selected for whatever reason, you're more than welcome to just make it and bring it to the walk. If your project is more like something that's like a static installation or like a musical performance or something that would require like more resources or cause the walk to like come to a stop and engage with it, that's a bit more of like a case by case basis. Like so anything that's just kind of like almost like a pop-up, like, oh, we just bring it and we just do it self-sufficiently, great. But then otherwise it'll be more of like a conversation with us about if it's viable or not.
Totally. The other thing I will answer too is there is a possibility to design pieces that live, say, like specifically at the sort of end location of the walk, which is at the Mill in New Glasgow. And I also just want to bring up another initiative that we sort of have along with the sort of traditional like traveling version of the walk, which is that we will be offering an alternative way of viewing the event from indoors, from inside the sunroom of the mill, which is a great option for folks who, for whatever reason, can't travel the 1 kilometer walk of the route, or don't want to be outside, or whatever reason. We will be kind of transforming the sunroom in the mill, which is wheelchair accessible, into a really kind of magical space with lights. There will probably be some live music. There may be a little like craft activity that you can do. And as you're sitting in the sunroom, you will be able to see almost the entirety of the walk, just from the windows of that room, which is really cool. And it's actually like quite beautiful just to like see the like long line of lanterns moving across the Gardens of Hope. The other thing I want to say too is that we will be offering a series of workshops in lantern making starting in early December. We'll be offering 2 workshops for little kids age 3 to 8. One workshop will happen in New Glasgow. One workshop will happen in Summerside. We'll also be offering 2 workshops in sort of our traditional, and sorry, that workshop for little kids is going to be about working with paper lanterns. So it's really easy, super fun way to like work, like teach a lantern technique to little kids that they can complete in like the span of an hour and a half. We're also going to do 2 dogwood lantern workshops, which is sort of for anybody like age, say 9 and up. Very popular with adults and teens and older kids who have a little bit more dexterity, and they want to create a sculptural lantern using dogwood and willow and bed sheets. So the full program announcement for all of our solstice workshops is going to be going live on November 21st. So there will be registration for those workshops, and that's a great place to start if you want to participate in the solstice walk and you want to build a lantern, but you're maybe not ready to sort of like make the full commitment to going for a full like community project. You can come to one of these workshops, learn how to make a lantern of your own, and bring it in the walk. The other thing is that our open studio sessions, details of which will also be sort of announced more formally on the 21st, is another place where if you start a lantern at one of these workshops and you want to finish it, or you want to come and make more lanterns, you can do that at the open studios. So those programs are kind of available to you and are a great way to kind of like dip your toes in, get things started, and still participate in the solstice walk itself. I also want to say registration for the walk for folks who want to attend will also be going live on the 21st. We are requiring folks to register in advance. Admission for the walk will be by donation. There will be a fairly decent capacity, but we will need to keep track of it because it got pretty busy last year. So any questions? Just like take a minute, and if there are no more questions, we will probably call it a night, and thank you all for coming. All right. Well, thanks so much.
Thanks.
And we are very excited to see what kinds of community projects emerge. Deadline is November 19th. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.